Hello everyone, myself Dr. Tanishq Katti from the Football Digest,
And I'm Atawaris Warsi from All About Football.
and we present to you the Football Maniacs Podcast.
Today, welcome to the ninth episode of the Football Maniacs. And today we are excited to have Darren Bowman as our special guest and our first guest in our podcast. With over 2 decades of football experience, Darren has journeyed from being a professional player to becoming a highly respected coach and technical director. His remarkable career spans leadership roles in top football clubs and academies worldwide. Currently, as technical director at Lehman FC, Darren oversees the development and implementation of elite football strategies and has also served as youth academy director there. Darren's extensive background includes being assistant director of sport at Wellington College International Shanghai and founding DB7K, an international football consultancy delivering customized player and coach development programs across Asia, China, and globally. He holds a UEFA A coaching license, and his tenure at Manchester City Football Club saw him lead youth teams and contribute to Premier League championship victories. Known for creating successful players, development pathways, Darren's expertise covers coaching, technical direction, talent identification, and leadership in diverse football settings. We are thrilled to have you, Darren, in our podcast. Any few words that you would like to say?
Well, thank you guys, and quite humbled actually by the introduction. So it's a real pleasure to spend this time with you on the Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are honored to have you on the podcast.
No, it's always a pleasure to share and pay it forward and to the football community, globally. So it's my life, it's my passion, and you guys are the same. So yeah, looking forward to it.
So,
Yeah,
Darren, just to start off, like I mentioned about the introduction and the experience. So, can you let us know your experience? And I wanted to focus more on the DB7K, your the international consultancy that you have created. Can you let us know about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, DB7K came about through my experience in China, really, and there was huge opportunities in the market focusing on coach education. Um, the point being, if my belief is, if you can develop good coaches, you have a chance and an opportunity to develop good players. And really, the consultancy was set up with that in mind, was to give opportunities to young coaches or coaches of any level to come to learn and be exposed to the processes of coaching, whether that be amateur level, grassroots level, or coaches who are aspiring to the professional levels. So we set up DB7K because we had the network, we had the global network and the connections, and we wanted to pay it forward and give the opportunities to initially coaches in China, and then the consultancy grew to further afield. So yeah, you get to a stage in your career where you feel that you need to be able to pay it forward, and for the development of the game and the development and opportunities for players, the coaching role is a key role, and is one that comes with a lot of expectation, but a big responsibility also. So we really felt that we could make a difference initially in China and Shanghai, and then obviously it took us further afield.
Yeah.
yeah, that's really great to hear that the difference that you are making in Asian football. And I was, very intrigued by the fact that you left United Kingdom and you transitioned to this side of football, the Asian side. So I would just like you to I'd just like to know as to what motivated you to come to Asian football and develop the football here.
For me, guys, after over a decade at Manchester City, and I was really so fortunate to have a first class education in football after a modest playing career, if you like, as a young professional. And then the timing and the experiences and the different roles at the club, and being exposed to some of the best minds in the game, on and off the pitch, regards player development, talent ID, recruitment. I mean, when you are taught for 6 seasons by Rodolfo Borrell, who went on to be Guardiola's assistant in the treble-winning team. When you have that type of opportunity, and you get to coach the players that I was fortunate enough to coach, it comes a time where, I didn't really want to coach or go to any other club in the UK. And I really felt that it was a time in my career that I'd been given so many opportunities and taken them. And I had a big desire inside to really get out of my comfort zone. And when I completed it was ECAS, Elite Coaches Apprenticeship Scheme, which was hosted by the Premier League, and Premier League clubs could, take advantage of that development program. And I was fortunate to be on that program, representing Manchester City. And through that process, again, it really makes you question where you are in your career and what you want. And then the real deciding factor really was when President Xi visited CFA. And it really put a lot of attention onto the club. And President Xi then presented their plan for football development for China. And they were looking for expertise and skill sets. So after 11 years at the club, like I say, doing numerous roles, junior academy, elite player development, etc., and, really being exposed to some brilliant minds like, Pedro Marquez and Simon Wilson and Rodolfo, like I say, it was a real chance for me to get out of my comfort zone and say, okay, let's put all my learning in a different, to the test. And the opportunity came in Shanghai to help develop the game in China. And really looking back now, nothing can really prepare you for the move from Manchester City and the Premier League to when I went to China. It was really an unbelievable experience. To say out of my comfort zone would be an understatement initially. Yet here we are, we survived, and we lived to tell the story, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, taking the step, very brave. And I know many people look at it and say, why would you leave, Manchester City at the time, and why would you go to China? But for my personal development, it was why not. And it really gave me an opportunity to start again, really. And really, because when I arrived in China, it dawned on me very quickly that I needed to forget everything that I know, and really start again, because we're in a different place, different culture, coaching in a foreign language. So really an unbelievable experience.
Yeah. And just like you mentioned that it was an unbelievable experience for you to go to China. It was completely a different move for you. So talking about the experience, because you have been for around 7 to 8, nearly a decade now in China, being and training and being the technical director as well. So what has your experience been of not only Chinese football but Asian football in general? Because China majorly competes in the AFC tournaments. So what is your thinking about that, and how do you think has that developed so far?
I think the first point we need to make is that China, like India, just through sheer population, has phenomenal potential. It really does. And during my time in the mainland and now in Hong Kong, and having the opportunity to travel around different parts of Asia, the potential really hits you, wherever you go. Whether it be the grassroots football, the schools football, leading into the clubs and the professional game, the potential is phenomenal. And I really, during my time when I first arrived, what became very clear to me was there was a real heavy focus on the outcome, the result, and this was hampering, if you like, youth development and talent ID, because we know in youth development it's long-term athletic development. So them two things really were obvious, and then we looked at the pressure, the time pressure, if you like, that the students in China are under regards education, and then the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Sport, how they align and work together to develop and deliver the programs. And a lot of it is done through the schools. So there was a lot of experiences for me where it was about assessing the situation and then deciding the best strategies, both in the short term, medium term, and long term, and to give the potential, boys and girls, young men and women, the potential to give them the best opportunities and the best experiences that we could. That obviously is quite challenging when you don't speak the language and you're trying to work out the intricacies of the culture. Yet, what I found was when you have the humility, but you also know you have to deal with the expectation, then once you show a genuine interest in the Chinese culture and the Eastern way of thinking, and you start to educate yourself, and the Chinese people are very open and very supportive of people like myself because they know we are there to try to help them. Yet it was they were helping me and I was helping them at the same time to put processes and structures in place to give as many children opportunities as we could to be exposed to the game, to learn how to play the game for different reasons, and to create that ecosystem of education and the support around the students. So, that involved the teachers, the parents, the coaches, the PE, the grandparents. So we really did set about creating the ecosystem and giving and focusing on opportunities and experiences. And through that, obviously, then processes produce results. And real education was key to the development when I was in China. So, numbers wise, the numbers are quite phenomenal, and nothing prepares you for that. I'm sure it's the same in India. Yet, I think that to put good processes in place and you having a clear understanding of the mindset that you're dealing with, and you're genuine with that, you can really achieve great things. And we had some really, really great experiences.
Yeah, coming to those experiences that you just mentioned, I was actually going through the recent history of Lehman, and I saw that you guys just won the Premier League, Hong Kong Premier League, for the first time in your history last season. And your rivals Kichi, they won the title 5 times in the last 6 seasons, and you broke that pattern. So it was a bit like Manchester City, like the dominant force that they are right now, and you broke that dominance of that particular club. And I've seen the vision that your club has, and since you are the technical director now, since you have come to this place as a technical director, I'm intrigued by the fact that what goes on to become a technical director, and what is your main focus of work as a technical director of a football club.
Yeah, well, for me, Dr. Tanishq, was just from my own experience, through my coaching journey and through having the opportunity to, like I say, start to coach in schools, do PE classes, do after schools, work in the Centre of Excellence at Preston North End, and then work part-time at Manchester City, and then, go in full-time with the Junior Academy, which was my first exposure to recruitment and talent ID. I think when you put all them experiences together, you're prepared for the technical director role. And then it's about, the succession plan and the alignment. Now, the vision comes from the ownership and the president, as do the KPIs and the investment. And then my job really is two things, because we follow the European model, where we have the technical director and the head coach. You have to remember as well, the technical director role is still quite new in Asia and Southeast Asia. So it's still a role that ownership of clubs, for example, educating themselves on and understanding. Yet at Lehman, my role as the TD is to oversee the different departments, and make sure we're all aligned. So the analysis, the medical, the sports science, to oversee the academy from U22s down. So the coaching team, and to make sure that we are following our philosophy and our methodology, and then to succession plan with the first team. So we have our scouting timeline. We know the windows, and then it's about the position-specific profiles that we're looking for, and the personalities and the characters that we're looking to bring in. Now, remember as well, in this part of the world, we are still trying to develop a return on investment model. So we have to be very clear on that when our ownership and our presidents, when they're investing to bring the foreign players along with developing the local players, then a big part of the role is to protect the investment. And protecting the investment means the succession planning through the pathway. So we want and we need to open and make sure the pathway is clear for our academy players to go through. And then we put it into the 4 sections of the players that are ready to break through, the young players that are still developing. Then you have your seasoned professionals who are in the peak of their career, if you like. And then we also have the players that are into their twilight of their career. Yet in Hong Kong, for example, that experience is so valuable. And what we do at Lehman is we take the senior professional, if you like, and we start to transition them into our academy setup. So we have that continuity, which is a big thing that the ownership want. So, when we look at the position-specific criteria that we're looking for, and then my job then is to put the database together and use different platforms to do that, whether that be Scout, Instat, StatsBomb, Transfer. There's so many, and the platform is really dictated to by the budget and the resource that we have available, and then with the sports science and the medical departments, especially for our first team and our youth team, is to make sure that our players, and the players have responsibility for this as well, is to make sure we have maximum availability of the players. And this is vitally important because we don't have the luxury of 2 to 3 players for every position like a Manchester City. But we are still tasked with going into a season now where we're going to have 3 games in a week with the Champions League. The last season was the culmination of a vision, of a target. We achieved it. And then the point then is we need to go on to the next stage and the next phase. So the next phase, because football never ends, it never stops. And, we need to show a clear pathway for our local talent. We need to do that to obviously have an impact with the Hong Kong national teams. And then we also need to create that return on investment model. When we look at our, we have some good 2008 players, for example, some real high potential between 2008 and 2006. We have players that, in my opinion, with my experience, if they were in Europe, for example, they would be at Category 1 or Category 2 academies. So sometimes it's also about being creative with the landscape that you have, and that also then comes with the network.
Yeah, and just like you mentioned that Chinese football is focusing more on grassroots. Like there's a separate section, 2006, 2008 players are like players. If they were in Europe, they could have played Category 1, Category 2. So talking about, there was an infamous project about the Chinese football that we heard a couple of seasons prior, that the project was there, means they tried to bring in big players, but the project didn't work out. So now since they are once again coming back, because it is one of the most populated countries in the world after India, China. So how are they reviving themselves? And not just about Chinese football, Asian football in general, because as compared to the counterpart, European football, there's a drastic difference between the sides, both the sides. But if we see the AFC Cup that we witnessed this year itself, there was a quite good improvement in the levels, and not just about China or countries that are top of the Asian, apex, that are in the apex, but we if we talk about India, then teams like Australia, those are also coming in. So what do you think of the same? Means how is Asian football reviving itself back again?
I think if we take the mainland, if we take China, for example, the Shanghai Port and Shanghai Shenhua and Beijing Guan, these would be good examples of clubs in tier one cities that would be good examples of best practice regards, player recruitment, coach recruitment, session planning. I mean, Shanghai Port have had some very good foreign coaches and mindsets. I mean, Mads Davidson, along with Sven-Goran Eriksson, they really set that club up for success. I mean, Beijing Guan have an excellent recruitment operation throughout China for the development and the player pathway. So they would be examples in the Super League, if you like, of best practice. And we see Shanghai Port this year going to compete in the ACL one, which is fantastic. And I mean, but the other thing that people may not know outside of the mainland is one of the catalysts to the revival was the village football, and it's known as the Kunchao in the southwest region. And it's really amazing, the urban regeneration and the impact that this has had. I mean, in Asia in general, we know, guys, there's unbelievable passion from the fans, from people like yourself. There's a real passion for the game in this part of the world, and the village football, the Kunchao, really had a huge impact. And it's an amateur game, but the following is quite unbelievable. And they have a strategic partnership with the Premier League, and the Premier League are now going to help with coach education in the grassroots game. So when you look at that type of organization, and you can use that as maybe a foundation, if you like, for the Super League, you can see again China is coming back with the potential. Yet the AFC in general, the federation, the resources that this part of the world has, and the infrastructure that's going into place is world class. I mean, if you take Johor FC in Malaysia, is a world class football club and operation, really unbelievable investment. And then, if you look at clubs like Mumbai City, that are part of the City Football Group. So for me, the infrastructure and the investment and the resources are really developing at a phenomenal rate. They really are. I mean, what is always going to be a challenge is the history of the game, because a lot of these nations are quite new. The AFC, the federation, for example, only recognized the Indian Super League in 2017. So if we look at it like that, these operations, leagues, organizations, associations are babies when it comes to world football. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't catch up. Of course they can. But the point I'm making is when you have this amount of investment, when you have this amount, when you have the populations of Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, India, China, when you have these types of member associations, what they need to go with the resource and the infrastructure and the investment is skill sets. And then it's where them skill sets are recruited or required to come from. Now, we see that there is a big influx of foreign talent. People like myself, I'm an example. Yet, I will go back to my original point, is what works in Spain is not necessarily going to work in China. And what works in the UK is not necessarily going to work in India. Yet, through FIFA, for example, and Arsene Wenger's team, and the work that they did recently in India, and again, India also has a Premier League, partnership, a strategic partnership there. You would suggest that this is being set up for success regards the sharing of knowledge and information. What I think that the foreign individual needs to be aware of is it's exactly that. It's sharing of knowledge and information. It's not yes or no or right or wrong. It's then about, collective decision making. like we do at Lehman with the football club, with player recruitment or the pathway for the young player. So, I think the foreign skill set is required for sure. Yet the recruitment of the correct skill set is the real key, which is the same when we're dealing with recruiting foreign players into Asia.
Yeah, with the way that you said that India, countries like India, China, Thailand, all of these countries have a lot of potential. And one even in the 1950s, India was technically considered as a superpower of football. So coming back to that level of football and coming back to that infrastructure will take a lot of time for countries for the Asian countries. What do you think are the if I would say the future superpowers? Like we have Saudi coming up as of now. In the next 5 years, it will probably be the biggest competitor to European football with the amount of money that they're investing in football and with the infrastructure that they are going to develop for their 2034 World Cup. They already have established the plans and everything. So, what do you think after? Because I consider Saudi as one of the developed nations or the most developed nation as in terms of football after Europe. What do you think are the future predictions from a European perspective? We have it from an Indian perspective, but what do you think is the prediction from a European perspective as to what will be the next superpower or what is the future of football?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The pace of the development in the Middle East is fantastic and extremely exciting. I think that the AI is going to play a part also. I think we know the nations like Saudi Arabia who are on the cutting edge of technology. We can also say Qatar as well. These nations are probably going to be able to catch up very quickly. Yet the enthusiasm and the motivation and the excitement is one thing. The other thing is actually the discipline and the discipline to do it year after year and keep moving forward and keep developing. So the discipline of it is going to be key. I think from a European perspective, and if you look at other, leading nations like South America, for example, the key to the success is the future, and you need to be able to develop your own players. So, I would suggest that yes, the Middle East is going to be a huge leader, and for sure Saudi with the AFC is going to be a key driver. There's absolutely no doubt. But on the other side as well, when you look at the African continent, and you look at the African nations, there is I had it firsthand when I went to Right to Dream in Ghana, many, many years ago. But the African nations, they have a lot of talent, and they have, when you talk about players, you need to think about products of environment as well. And, the hunger and the desire, etc., etc. So, yes, we can see that the superpowers like the Middle East can take huge steps in different areas to develop the game and drive the game forward. Yet, if we're talking about history and creating a legacy and being pioneers, then youth development and player development is going to be key to that. And I think that when you look at the English Premier League clubs, for example, when you look at the Bundesliga clubs and you look at the European leagues in Holland, etc., they have well-established player development models and clear return on investment business models through player development, because players developed our assets for the football club, and then the football club then can decide if they retain that asset or they want to move that asset on. And I think we need to also be aware, guys, that football is becoming, or already is, a global business with the multi ownership groups, and it's football business basically, and the the best business is your product, and the product is your first team that wins your games. I mean, that's enabled Lehman to now go to ASL2 Champions League, which is great exposure for the club, and that's what needed to happen for our club to progress, and that came about because of the performance of our first team.
Yeah, and Darren, just a question popped up in my mind, like just like you mentioned that Saudi, because they are bringing in big players, but player development hasn't been that good for Saudi Arabia. That their own players are not as compared to the European players. If you talk about African players, they develop their own players and then they send it to a big league. So there's a huge difference. So talking about the means top powerhouses, I kind of think like Saudi Arabia are following the same pattern, same mistake that Chinese football did in the couple of years, because they are bringing in big players, but that will eventually not work, according to me. What are your thoughts about the same? Means it that will work, or will Saudi after 3 to 4 years face the same situation that Chinese football faced a few years back?
For me, time will tell. Time will tell the story. It depends what the strategy is. They will have a short, medium, and long-term strategy. You would think that highly intelligent people, successful people, have done their due diligence regards the past, the present, and the future. And ultimately, with the Middle East, like China, they need to put themselves on the football map. And the way they have done it is fantastic, is phenomenal. Yet, when we go back to our original point about long-term athletic development, that takes patience, it takes perseverance, it takes a lot of professionalism. So, for me, it's about enthusiasm is one thing, but the discipline, because you really need to have a lot of love for the game, and love, and a real love for player development, and a real passion to see or identify local potential, and then give that local potential the experiences and the opportunities and the environment to flourish. And then also you need the pathway. In football, you're always going to have the situation where, if you have the resource and you have the money, you can go and buy the ready-made product if you like. Yet, if I go back to my original point, when we're succession planning in the club, Lehman is not going to get any real return on investment if we recruit a player in the twilight of their career. So if they are plus 32. Now, obviously, you can look at different levels of players, but in our situation, if we can recruit players who are in the peak of their career, we're going to get that return on investment regards performances, which hopefully will hit with results. What our job then is, while that is happening in the short term, is in the medium term, we have to have our local players ready for the level. So in the Middle East, I'm sure there is some outstanding processes already in place, world-class facilities and infrastructure. The key is time. And what I found from my experience in China is time can be a scarce commodity sometimes, when we talk about patience, for example. So one of the arts of the job is identifying the short-term wins to give you that time or buy you that time. But ultimately, it will come down to the vision of the leadership and the ownership, and their passion and their desire to develop their own talent, whether this be, boys and girls, going into young professionals. I mean, the women's game is growing hugely, at a phenomenal pace. So yeah, in answer to your question, nobody has a crystal ball, and time will tell. My hope is that they've learned from other case studies, and this is part of say a first phase, if you like, while developing the second, third, and fourth phases, and we see we see football in the Middle East and Asia develop for the long term.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I agree with you. Develop that infrastructure, build that environment
yeah,
for a long-term success.
yeah.
Um, all right. So it's time for the surprise that we had. It's something that we discussed, and we have kept a small game. All right. If you would have seen it on the social media, it's called blind ranking. So
Mm.
basically, we'll be giving you the name of 10 players. All right, and you'll have to rank them from first to 10th. All right, and let's see if you are convinced by your own choices. All right, so I'll let Atawaris start with the names.
So first one is Maldini. Where would you keep him from 1 to 10? Paolo Maldini.
Maldini.
Yeah.
Oh, this is difficult, guys.
It's going to get more difficult.
mm, Paolo Maldini. I mean, the trophy cabinet is full, and to be honest, the job he did as a director at AC Milan is outstanding.
Commendable.
Anyway, let's say 6.
All right. Um, Johan Cruyff.
Mm. I mean, a leader of the game, I think, in the history of football. 3.
Beckenbauer.
Right.
Beckenbauer to Germany is probably Cruyff to Holland, so I don't want to upset the German listeners, but I'll probably go 4.
Lionel Messi.
1.
All right, so you're a Messi fan then.
Iniesta.
5.
Manuel Neuer.
Yeah, goalkeeper. I'm just doing this based on the position because it's not the glamorous one, right? But when we see what Edison has done at City, but let's go with 8.
All right. Then one of
Mbappe.
our yeah.
Mbappe.
Mbappe. I think I used 6, right?
Yeah, you have
Yeah.
used 6 for Maldini.
Maldini.
I think with Mbappe we go 7.
All right.
Messi number 1 because of what he's done. Mbappe's still got to do it.
Yeah. One of your fellow countrymen, Paul Scholes.
Oh, in my era as well. Genius midfield player. I think. So he's 1 to 10, right, guys?
Yeah.
Can you use the same number twice?
That's the beauty of the game.
I know, yeah. I mean, this is I'm sure Paul Scholes won't be happy with this, but I think we've only got 9 and 10 left, right? So 9.
9, 10, and 2. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
9.
Cristiano Ronaldo.
2.
And Georgie Best comes last. There's no chance.
George Best 10, but probably for his not for his on field, maybe for his off field.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But he was a generational player for United.
Yeah, I mean, for all I mean, some of them already legends of the game. Some of them will be legends of the game, and for me, the debate between Lionel and Cristiano will go on and on and on. But they're like, how can you put they leave a legacy, right? And these are special people.
So just I will repeat the top 10 rankings by you. Georgie Best 10th, Scholes 9th, Neuer 8th, Mbappe 7th, it's Maldini 6th, Iniesta 5th, Beckenbauer 4th, Johan Cruyff 3rd, CR7 2, and Lionel Messi 1st. If you want to change anyone, who will you change the positions?
I think I'd probably change Scholes and Maldini.
6th and 9th. Yeah.
let you do that. I mean, it was a great. It's great to have you, on this podcast,
Yeah.
and it was a pleasure for us to host you as the first ever guest speaker on the podcast. What are your thoughts? Just before we end the podcast, what are your thoughts as to how do you think this podcast will be in the coming years?
All right, guys, it's people like yourselves who are the heartbeat of the game, right? In my, I'm fortunate to work in a game that I love, and it's about sharing of information and paying it forward and building community, obviously building network. You know, I'm excited to see the Indian Super League this season, see what happens with the six derbies in Kolkata with the three teams. I mean, the league is now up to 13 teams.
Yeah.
It's exciting, but football is a global game, and
Hmm.
I'm sure your podcast and what you guys are doing will continue to grow. You're going to get some fantastic guests because there's many people who love to talk about the game, right? And
Hmm.
there's so many different areas of the game on and off the pitch. So I'm thankful and humbled that you asked me to come on. It's really nice to spend the time, and yeah, good luck with the podcast. And yeah, I'm sure you're going to have many interesting conversations.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
sir,
you.
so much for your time, and thank you for these kind words.
Thank you once again.
I would really, I and Atawaris, we both would like to thank you for coming on this podcast and sharing your insight, because we as fans do have opinion regarding football, but to have those insights coming from someone who is in football and who is in that structure, it was really insightful to see from our perspective. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And this is it. I guess this will be the end of this special episode. So this is Dr. Tanishq Katti from the Football Digest.
And this is Atawaris from All About Football, the Football Maniacs, signing off.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.